HOA built a fence around my helipad, so I flew in and landed directly on their gazebo. Have you ever wondered what happens when a petty neighborhood power grab collides with a pilot's unshakable resolve? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and nosy neighbors reigned supreme, a storm was brewing, one that would end with a helicopter's blades slicing through the tension and a gazebo reduced to splinters. It all started with Karen Wadsworth, the iron-fisted president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. Karen, with her clipboard perpetually in hand and a penchant for enforcing rules nobody remembered voting on, had a vendetta against anything that disrupted her vision of suburban perfection. Enter Jake Malone, a retired Air Force pilot turned private contractor who'd recently moved into the neighborhood. Jake's pride and joy? A sleek, custom-built helipad in his backyard, used for his freelance aerial surveying gigs. It was fully permitted, meticulously maintained, and most importantly nobody's business but his own. Or so he thought. Karen didn't see it that way. To her, the helipad was an eyesore, a noisy affront to the HOA's sacred covenants. Never mind that Jake's flights were infrequent, always scheduled during daylight hours and quieter than the neighborhood's leaf blowers on a Saturday morning. Karen rallied her loyal HOA board, a group of busybodies who nodded along to her every whim, and declared war on Jake's helipad. Their weapon of choice? A 6-foot-tall chain-link fence erected overnight around the helipad, complete with a padlocked gate. The message was clear: Jake was grounded. But Jake wasn't the type to roll over. He'd faced worse than Karen in his years dodging enemy fire in combat zones. The morning after the fence appeared, he stood in his backyard, coffee mug in hand, staring at the gleaming metal monstrosity. The HOA's notice, taped to the gate, cited vague community aesthetic standards and demanded he cease all helicopter activity. Jake's jaw tightened. He wasn't just fighting for his helipad, he was fighting for his freedom, his livelihood, and his right to live on his own terms. Jake's first move was to dig into the HOA's rulebook. He spent hours poring over the bylaws, cross-referencing them with local zoning laws and his property deeds. The truth hit him like a tailwind: the HOA had overstepped. His helipad was grandfathered in under an older ordinance, and the fence? It violated setback regulations, sitting 3 feet over his property line. Armed with this, Jake marched to the next HOA meeting, ready to lay out his case. The meeting room was a sea of pastel cardigans and skeptical glares. Karen sat at the head of the table, her smile as sharp as a blade. Jake presented his evidence, permits, surveys, legal precedents. He spoke calmly, his voice steady, but the board wasn't listening. Karen dismissed him with a wave, claiming the fence was for the community's safety. The room erupted in murmurs of agreement, except for one voice. Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a quiet widow who'd lived in Willow Creek for decades. Evelyn, with her silver hair and soft drawl, stood up and dropped a bombshell. Karen, you didn't even vote on that fence. You just ordered it. My late husband was on the board when those rules were written, and Jake's right, his helipad's legal. The room froze. Evelyn's words hung in the air, a twist nobody saw coming. Karen's face reddened, but she quickly recovered, doubling down. Evelyn, you're mistaken. The board acted within its rights, but the seed of doubt was planted. Jake left the meeting with a plan and a spark of defiance in his eyes. If Karen wanted a fight, she'd get one. The confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. Jake wasn't about to let a fence dictate his life. He called his lawyer, filed a formal complaint with the county, and got a surveyor out to confirm the property line violation. The county issued a notice ordering the HOA to remove the fence within 48 hours or face fines. Karen, predictably, ignored it, sending Jake a smug email: "The HOA will not be intimidated by your antics, Mr. Malone. The fence stays." That was her mistake. Jake wasn't one for empty threats. He'd spent years making split-second decisions under pressure. And this was no different. On a crisp Saturday morning, with the neighborhood gathered for the HOA's annual Gazebo Garden Party event Karen treated like her personal coronation, Jake decided it was time to make a statement. He climbed into his helicopter, a sleek black Bell 407, and fired up the rotors. The hum filled the air, drowning out the string quartet Karen had hired. Neighbors looked up, confused, as Jake lifted off from a nearby field he'd secured permission to use. He circled Willow Creek, the morning sun glinting off his chopper's blades. Below, Karen stood in the community park, her arms crossed, glaring skyward. The gazebo, a gaudy structure draped in fairy lights and HOA banners, sat at the center of the festivities. Jake's radio crackled with a warning from the county air traffic coordinator who'd been looped in on the situation. "Jake, you're clear for a low pass, but keep it legal." Jake grinned. Legal was his middle name. Then, in a move that would be recounted at Willow Creek barbecues for years, Jake brought his helicopter down not on his helipad, still caged by Karen's fence, but directly onto the HOA's prized gazebo. The skids touched down with surgical precision, splintering the wooden frame and sending fairy lights flying like confetti. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's scream was louder than the rotors. Jake cut the engine, stepped out, and tipped his aviator sunglasses at the stunned onlookers. "Fence comes down by Monday, Karen," he said, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Or I start parking here." The fallout was immediate and glorious. Karen's empire crumbled faster than her gazebo. The county slapped the HOA with fines for the illegal fence, backed by Jake's airtight documentation. Evelyn Carter, emboldened by her earlier stand, rallied other neighbors who'd grown tired of Karen's reign. A petition circulated demanding her resignation as HOA president. By the next board meeting, Karen was out, replaced by Evelyn, who promptly voted to dismantle the fence and revise the HOA's overreaching rules. Jake's helipad was free again, its asphalt gleaming under the afternoon sun. But the real victory wasn't just the fence coming down, it was the neighborhood waking up. People started questioning the petty rules, the power trips, the Karens of the world who thrive on control. Jake became a local legend, the pilot who landed on tyranny and walked away unscathed. As the dust settled, Jake invited the neighborhood to his backyard for a barbecue. Kids ran around, marveling at the helicopter, while adults swapped stories of their own HOA battles. Evelyn, now the interim HOA president, raised a glass to Jake. To standing up, she said, her eyes twinkling. The crowd cheered, and for the first time in years, Willow Creek felt like a community, not a battleground. So what do you think? Was Jake's stunt a reckless power play, or a justified stand against a bully? Share your thoughts, because sometimes it takes a bold move to remind us all what freedom really means.